everyone. My name is Ken Savage. I'm the associate producer here at American Conservatory Theater, and I am thrilled to welcome you to the Geary Theater. Raise your hand if this is your first time here at A.C.T's Geary Theater. Wonderful, wonderful. Welcome, welcome. You are in for a treat this evening as we have three special guests from our current production of The Great Leap here to be in conversation with all of you. The Great Leap officially opens on Wednesday, March 13th and runs through March 31st. So we hope all of you will find time to come and see this production. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guests of honor. Joy Meads, our director of dramaturgy and new work. The playwright of The Great Leap, Lauren Yee. And star of The Great Leap, BD Wong.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. So I am thrilled to be in conversation with these two great artists. I wanted to share with you guys, for those of you who don't know them, like a couple of selected highlights of their bios, but there's a longer version in the program for the show and on our website. So Lauren Yee is a playwright who is being produced all over the place these days. A hometown girl. Her play, Cambodian Rock Band, with music by Dengue Fever, premiered at South Coast Rep last year and is at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival this season, followed by La Jolla Playhouse, Victory Gardens, and just announced Portland Center Stage is coming up as well. The Great Leap has been produced at the Denver Center, Seattle Rep, the Atlantic Theater, and the Gulf 3, and was just announced for the Steppenwolf next season, in addition to being here right now. And King of the Yees premiered at the Goodman and Center Theater Group, followed by productions at A.C.T. Theater, Canada's National Arts Center, and Baltimore Center Stage. She also has a boatload of awards, so thank you for joining us, Lauren Yee. Yes? And it's a great honor to be here with BD Wong as well. BD Wong is an illustrious resume in theater, film, and television. A couple of highlights. He first received widespread acclaim for his performance in David Henry Hwang's M. Butterfly, for which he won a Tony Award, a Drama Desk Award, a Theater World Award, an Outer Critics Circle Award, and the Clarence Sturwitt Award. And he remains the only actor in history to win all 5 awards for the same role.
Since the beginning of time.
Since the beginning of time. He was last seen in the Geary at the Orphan of Zhao, right? And your resume is too long for me to go through all of it, but I will say that a couple of TV and film roles that you may have recognized him from recently are Mr. Robot, right? Which is kind of filming. You're going back to filming from this, right? And also the Jurassic Park franchise. Yeah. So, BD Wong, everyone. Thank you. Yeah. It's a great treat for me to be here with both of these incredible artists, especially since they are two hometown San Francisco born and bred artists. And right. And so just to start out with, can you both tell me, like, where specifically in San Francisco did you grow up? And tell me a little bit about what it feels like to come back to the Geary to share your work with us.
So this will be a test if you're, true San Franciscans. So I've lived in 2 houses in San Francisco. One is up on Jackson and Jones. So, and if you know the city, it's a one-way cable car track. Street. So every time we had to move the car in and out of the garage. My mom had to move multiple cars before the cable car would come and kind of jangle at her. And the other house is in the Richmond, so 38 Geary.
Right.
38 Geary.
38 Geary.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
Is that the current house?
It's the current house.
Yes, that's why she doesn't say where it is.
Yeah.
And where did you grow up?
I grew up my whole life until I moved to New York. We were at 40th and Ortega.
Oh, great. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if you guys came to the Geary growing up, or what does it feel like to be here in this theater in your hometown?
I came to the Geary growing up. I came to the Geary. I had a really great drama teacher who brought us to the Geary many times, and who was a huge fan of the of A.C.T. In her personal life. Like, she was a avid subscriber, and she used the seasons, A.C.T. seasons past, as inspirations for a material that she would have us work on, or shows that she would have us do. And so I grew up never dreaming ever that I would actually perform on the stage, but really having great reverence for the space and for the company of actors that I saw when I was just deciding that I liked acting, it really was at that crucial time.
Yeah, wonderful. Great. And and either one of you, like, how does it feel to have your work here now in this moment in this theater?
I mean, I think it means a great deal to me. I think in particular, like this play, which is partially set in San Francisco, which it had, uses my father's growing up in San Francisco as a jumping off point. I think I said before in other talks that kind of the whole reason this play exists is that my father used to play basketball at Chinese Rec Center, kind of like if you go up on Mason. And for a long time, the Rec Center director, his name was Percy Chu, he was Rec Center director for about 52 years. And he was the one who asked my father and some other players of the Rec Center, would you like to come to China and, play some basketball games? And that was the seed to the play that, that we see now. So
it's fantastic. And we're going to talk a lot about that play, but I have one more question just for our hometown audience right now. I'm wondering, when you think about growing up in San Francisco, is there any way that, you think your childhood here impacted you and shaped you that you still carry forward with you in your life or in your art or both? Is there, it's a deep question, right? But yeah.
In other words, things that we learned or that we feel or that are part of us that are useful or are...
Yeah, that you can kind of trace back to being from here as opposed to, Dubuque, Iowa, or whatever.
Well, I grew up, I was a young Asian American guy that wanted to be an actor, and I was a young boy that discovered that he was gay in the 70s. And this was a wonderful place to grow up, and it informed everything about my ideas about what being gay meant, and at the time when I was processing that was a really heavy kind of thing to be processing. And as an Asian American, it's a celebration of. It's a very special place to grow up as an Asian American person that you don't really. I didn't realize it when I was doing it, when I was growing up. I didn't realize how special it was. But you go out and you realize that other Asian American people were sometimes the only Asian American people in their neighborhoods or in their cities or in their schools or whatever. And that's really special thing to have as an experience. And so those two things I think are, a huge part of my DNA.
Yeah.
And they come with San Francisco. That's kind of what you get when you live here still, even now. Yeah. And I think that's great.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I would second that you go, growing up in San Francisco and going to the public schools, you go to, I went to schools that were predominantly Asian American, that a majority of my classmates look like me, and kind of when that happens, when in some ways you're the majority, you're able to see all the different types of people and all the nuances, and not this person is Asian American, but you get to see someone in 3 dimensions, and I think that's what you're talking about when it's that special experience.
And it puts the what do you call it, the contrast to the kind of what was called when I was about to become an actor, they called it the real world. And the idea of how Asian Americans were represented in the media was so completely different from our growing up environment that it creates this tension that you want to do something about, or that
Yeah.
you want to somehow address in your work or in your choices, and so that's a great thing to have been given by just by the luck of growing up here.
Yeah, and I would say even now, because like my family, I think as your family has been here for generations. It's not
Yeah.
just not just my parents, but my grandparents,
Yeah.
my great grandparents. All made San Francisco home. Is that even now, when I go to like a Chinese restaurant in San Francisco, somebody at the table will know somebody else at the other table. It's true.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's the most fantastic thing ever.
Yeah.
I took Lisa Peterson and Tim Liu, that plays Manfred in the show, to our neighborhood restaurant last night for dinner, Capitol on Clay Street, and right.
Yeah. Ripple of recognition. Yeah.
And every time we go there, it's
Yeah.
just people and and that. I was like, Mom, who's that? Oh, that's, and I went to St. Mary's with her, or her all these. It's incredible.
Yeah. I grew up in Oakland, and I really felt like, and just going to school, like, it was so tangible the way in which all of the diversity in my classroom, you just saw the history of all of the people who have created America together. I never grew up in this idea of America as like a white narrative, right? And that was a tremendous gift for me, I think, going elsewhere in the country. I think it prepares you to be in the world as it actually is.
Yeah.
The way that that I think.
But it spoils you too.
Yeah.
in
It
some
spoils
ways.
you,
It's
too.
a rude awakening
Yeah.
to go out there. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, so let's talk a little bit about
Yeah.
this play. Speaking of telling more stories, so The Great Leap. How do you describe this play when you talk about it? Like, what is this play about?
I describe this play as it's the intersection of sports and politics. It's about diplomacy. It's about kind of the differences in culture as seen through the lens of basketball. I think it's also a play about San Francisco. It's a play set in Beijing. It's a play set in San Francisco.
Great. And you started to talk a little bit about this, but if you can go into a little bit more detail. So it's inspired in part by your father's story.
Yes.
So what about your father inspired you to write this play? Like, yeah.
So my father is 6'1", and he used to play basketball. It was kind of the only thing he was good at before he had kids. I mean, okay. My father's here tonight, and so he's probably like, no, there were plenty of other things he was good at. But it was one of the things that I knew about him. And growing up, I always heard this story about how he went to China. His first trip to China was playing this series of exhibition games. Because my father, he didn't play for the NBA, he didn't play for a college team. But like if you were kind of like in the San Francisco Chinatown community, if you played, Chinese Playground or you played Chinese Rec Center, there's like the Chinese New Year Classic at the Rec Center that he used to like take every year, like MVP. And so when this Rec Center director, Percy, was trying to put together a team to go to China, he asked my father and maybe like 10 or 11 other players who, were all Chinese American kids from San Francisco, probably most of whom had never been to China, but maybe their parents were from there, maybe not. And so in 1981, my dad and his teammates flew over to China. And if you know a little bit about the history, it was only maybe about 5 years since, China had really opened up to the West and opened up to tourists. And so my father and his teammates, got this, sponsored by the Chinese state, like window into, what the country was like at the time. And they basically toured around for 2 weeks playing the best teams in China. The national team, the best Shanghai, the best high school team, and the games. At least one of the games was actually broadcast on American television. Apparently, my mom remembers, being in San Francisco at the time, and her sister comes to her and she's like, Dee, you got to turn on the TV. Larry's on, and she turns on the TV. And there's my dad with a towel over his head because they're just losing so badly to the Chinese. Because very memorably, the Beijing team in particular it was the best team in the country. And in particular, they had this player named Mu Tiaju, who's 7'6", 350 pounds. He was China's best player in the 70s and 80s. He was supposed to be going to the Olympics. Up against my dad. He's from San Francisco, and he's good for a pickup game. And so that was the jumping off point for me, that I really wanted to explore this part of my father's life that I'd always heard about but really hadn't delved into. And so The Great Leap is not my father. It's a character named Manford, who personality-wise is very different from my father, who has a much different story, but my dad is the inspiration for that.
That's great. BD, how would you describe the character that you play?
The character that I play initially is kind of drafted by the Communist Party to serve as the translator for the American coach when the American coach comes to coach basketball in the early 70s. And through his relationship with this coach, he not only grows to understand and be wildly entertained and mystified by this American guy and the difference between their cultures, but he grows to love basketball. And the play kind of centers around their reunion 18 years after that initial meeting. And this is a guy who, I imagine many people of the time and period, are real party guys who feel trapped and completely beholden to everything the party wants them to be and wants them to do. And feels that and in the course of the play, we learn that his life decisions have depended greatly on that relationship to the party. And I'm very fond of this character. I think he's really very, very interesting and very rich. And I think I feel for him tremendously as a red-blooded, free-spirited American person. I can't even imagine what it's like to not be able to make decisions about your own life.
That's right. And you played this role in a previous production at the Atlantic Theater on a smaller stage, in a smaller house. Much smaller house. How big is that house?
99 seats.
99 seats, right?
This is 1,100 seats.
Yeah. So what is it like to return to the role and to scale it up for the house to this side? How does it feel different here in this house?
Well, I mean, just kind of start from the beginning. I really wanted to do it here. I was really, I just thought it was the luckiest day of my life when I found out that they were programming this play here, because I love the play so much, and we had such success in New York doing the play, and it's really rare for me to get a part like this that I really relate to and that I really get, and I feel it gets me and all of that stuff. So I wanted to do it, and then I assumed they were doing it at the Strand, at the theater on Market Street, the second A.C.T. space, the much smaller space. And I was fascinated by Ken Savage, who you met tonight, and Andy Donald, Associate Artistic Director, who their passion for putting it on this scary stage.
Yeah.
Because when you do a play in a 99-seat theater, you think of it as a 99-seat theater play. It's a natural thing. You kind of immerse yourself in the space, you make it fit the space, you make choices to make that work. And when someone from the outside says, no, I see this in a completely different way, it's really exciting, because you have to kind of see it through their view. And so I kind of jumped on the train of it. And what I've discovered is a lot of new, wonderful things that are side effects of sizing it up.
Yeah.
I mean, just tons of things that I didn't anticipate or think about. And you find yourself resisting at first because it's not the way you did it before. And then when you open yourself up to it, it's kind of great. I mean, it's fantastic. The one thing that comes to mind immediately is that I wore one costume in the 99-seat theater production. And it made total sense that I wore one costume. The person was very consistent. The character was very consistent as a result of that. Throughout time, he looked the same. Well, there's even a line in the play that he looks the same. And when they said, oh, here are the sketches of all the costumes you're going to wear in the A.C.T. production, I was amazed. I thought, oh, no, I can't wear more than one costume. And then I thought, wow, this is, of course, I do have to wear more than one costume. When I go off stage and I come back on and it's a different scene, in a space like this, it makes total sense and helps to tell the story.
Yeah.
And so everything from that to your voice and the use of your voice and the idea of what intimacy is on stage and how intimacy is performed in a larger space is amazing. And the play, I don't know, there are lots of little things in the play, I don't know if I'll be able to think of them, that are different. I don't know, you might be able to perceive what might be different better than I can, but there are things, they might be really subtle changes, but that feel kind of different. And that comes from two things. One, it being a bigger space, and two, working on it as an extension. You know, it's like, this is for me, this 2 rehearsal period put together. It's like working on it more. It's like, I want to keep working on it and working on it. It's like opera singers when they have a role in their repertoire, and they just, every time they do it, it gets deeper for them. And this is a rare opportunity. I mean, I don't know if I'll ever get the opportunity to do the play again. And to be able to do it in 2 very different ways with a different cast and a different director it has been a really valuable experience for me, a learning experience and a personally rewarding experience. Let alone, aside from the whole hometown thing, which is mind-blowing for me.
Yeah. I've noticed that too when I've had a couple of experiences where I've gotten to work with casts who are returning to a play after having done it before, and there's a way in which the play kind of marinates inside of you, and like new flavors and contours kind of rise to the surface. There's a richer quality, I think there can be. The longer
sure.
that the longer the amount of time that the play lives inside you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Lauren, have you ever written a sports play before, let alone a basketball play?
No.
And were you a big basketball fan before this play?
Oh, I was no.
Yeah. Okay.
No. I think like growing up, like I watch baseball games and football games, but basketball was something that I never really got into. I think it was probably because growing up in San Francisco in the '90s, the Niners were great.
Yeah.
So those games were great to watch.
And the A's and the Giants were killing it.
And the Giants were killing it, and the Warriors not so much, right? And so like I really didn't understand the game until I sat down and started to write this play, and I, had to figure out like why do people watch it? Why do people find it so exciting? And I think I really got into it. One thing that I think is really interesting is I think in general there's a lot more basketball players that feel like individuals, like the LeBron or the Steph Curry. Yeah. Whereas in football, like if football feels like war, it's because they all have a helmet, they all wear the same uniform, and there's this sense of, we're all one unit working together. Whereas basketball, it's fewer people. You can kind of see them. Like if they want to be individuals, you can see more of that on them. And the difference that one player can make in a basketball team is enormous. Yeah. And so it made me think a lot about like personal responsibility and speaking up and what that experience is like, especially, when in basketball you're not putting on a helmet. Yeah. You're kind of stepping out on that court. And if you've ever been to a basketball game, you realize when you're sitting courtside, you're really close. Yeah. There's this incredible proximity to the players that I think you don't get really with any other sport.
Yeah.
Like baseball, there's distance. Football, there's distance. Basketball, you could be this far from them.
Yeah, and you really can see how one person has the potential of injecting their spirit into and totally changing the dynamic, not just because of what they do, but what they inspire others to do.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think the metaphor of how American the idea of individuality is, in contrast to the Chinese notion or the communist notion of not being an individual or being part of this mass of humanity, is what she's mined beautifully in the play and allowed to be poetic and symbolic, but also completely organic, which is one of the things that I think is most successful about the play.
Yeah. And to celebrate the role that the bravery of an individual can have in the world, right? It's exciting.
Yeah.
So you talked about wanting this play to move like a basketball game in the way that you wrote it. And I guess I'm wondering, BD, as an actor, is that something that you feel as you're moving your way through the game? Does it feel like there's a kind of momentum or that feels athletic
it
in a way?
Absolutely does. And Lauren writes in a very distinctive style. She rarely or if ever uses uppercase letters.
Yeah, I think that's more so than an aesthetic thing. It's a time thing. It takes more time to capitalize.
But the on the page, the script looks a lot like poetry or rap or it's very kind of percussive. And very there are long speeches in the play, but there's a lot of dialogue that's rather rapid fire. And once a director, and the two directors that we have worked on in this play both embraced the idea that the play was enacted like a basketball game. Once a director actually directs it into the play, it really does then end up feeling... in our production, we're using... We had a coaching session with the UCF basketball coach, and he taught us, basic basketball physical vocabulary, which is in the play, in some of the scenes of the play. And whereas, so there are moments in the play where Lisa, the director, would say, well, you're cutting him off. It's like you're trying to get the ball back, and so you must kind of cross over and stand in his way in that way. So. Things that look very organic, like regular things in conversation, are actually kind of inspired by basketball and the way that basketball is played. And that's great. It's really fun to do as a result.
Wow, that physical vocabulary. That's fantastic. So you learned a lot about basketball for this for this production. And I guess, tell me about, dramaturgically, what did you do in terms of the way that you built the scenes to make it feel like a basketball game to you? Yeah.
I think, a lot of the scenes are kind of these very quick two-person scenes, like different combinations of kind of one-on-one. That almost seem like we're starting in the middle of the scene, that it enters in the person's I want something, and the other person is in opposition with them. And I think hopefully that gives you the feel of it.
Yeah.
I think I always imagine it as a play that had an intermission because you got to have halftime. And
there's also four characters in the play and a fifth character who's kind of not an actor playing this fifth character, but a very important character.
Presence,
a presence, yes. So there's 5 people on the team.
Yeah. That's great. That's fantastic. So we should talk a little bit, and then I want to turn it out for questions, so you guys prepare any questions that you have in your mind. But let's talk a little bit about the historical background of the play. So it's set in 2 time periods, right? And oh my gosh, 73 and 89?
71 and
89. Shoot, 71 and 89. And can you guys just talk a little bit about what was happening in those 2 time periods? And I know we could go into great detail, but a kind of Cliff Notes version. And why those felt like good moments to set the play in.
Without too many spoilers.
Without too many spoilers. So we're not going to go into all of the detail.
So 1971 was right around when I don't think Nixon had gone to China yet, but ping pong diplomacy had happened. That an American ping pong team went to China that kind of opened up diplomatic relationship between the two countries. And then 1989, there were protests, kind of the big million-person marches around Tiananmen Square going on.
Right. And without going into too much detail, but like I think we can talk about the years leading up to 71. Like for your character, BD.
Oh, the Cultural Revolution.
The Cultural Revolution and the Great Leap Forward. And I guess 71 is coming after a period of extreme tumult, right? And is the beginning of a transition into a period of more stability, right?
Yeah, and a lot of people that even we've only done the play a week, and people that I've spoken to who have any kind of connection to their parents coming to the United States post-Cultural Revolution or mid-Cultural Revolution are really moved by the characters' situation and a depiction of the emotional feelings that one has when one's trying to kind of get out of their country and stuff.
Yeah.
And really my knowledge of the Cultural Revolution is from you. You're the one that taught me about the Cultural Revolution as the dramaturg for the play and production. And so, all I can say is that it seems unfathomably difficult to me and impossible and horrendous what people went through during this time period. When intelligence and art and creativity and all of that stuff that we hold dear were labeled. What were they labeled?
Disloyal or suspect.
Suspect.
Those are very dangerous qualities. Things to love, right? Yeah. In that time. And coming from a time of also great physical deprivation, right? Like widespread famine, right? Shortages, in this accelerated transition towards a communist manufacturing, farming, all of that in the economy, right? Production systems. So coming out of great deprivation, great political persecution of anybody who was considered a potential dissident because, of their level of education or whether they would be seen to represent Western values, right?
Right.
So coming out of that into this moment, we have a character who has survived a great deal, right? And then there are a couple of decades of where the children who were born and grew up and became the protesters at Tiananmen Square didn't live through all of that time.
Right.
Right? They lived at a time of much more plenty, Yeah. And so it's a moment of much more plenty and much less persecution. And so that those moments of protest are a new generation kind of seeing what is possible. Right?
You see this all the time, and it's really interesting as I get older. I'm kind of old. But that you see and want to judge young people for not having an experience that they could not have had. All of the young gay post-AIDS kids are having their own kind of experience now that is totally valid and not informed by AIDS.
That's right.
And a lot of post-9/11 kids are not really, they will never have the same gravity of feeling about 9/11 that we did, that the people that were on. And that's just a phenomenon of the way life actually works. And this thing about those kids in Tiananmen Square is a part of that. They were very, very kind of, what's the word? They were a little naive.
And a little sheltered in some ways.
But what I like about the play is that it's a play by an American writer. There's a kind of meta, so it's a piece of art. Talking about that in some ways, that the Cultural Revolution and how those things were, books were burned and things like that. And in the face of that history, a play that springs forth from that history is interesting to me.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. And also, that embraces like the power of kind of reckless boldness of youth,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Yeah.
That can have a great effect in the world,
Yes.
right? So they don't know the things that are impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that was interesting when I first started working on your character, this Chinese translator who kind of by his nature keeps things in, doesn't kind of speak his truth because he's, trying
Chinese.
trying to survive. Like one of the challenges I was encountering, I was like, it's easy for, say, like the American coach who's like, kind of this like loud, sloppy person to say all their feelings.
Yeah.
But how do you get a character like yours to tell us what's inside? And so I don't think this, gives anything away that, the first moment you're on stage, you're speaking out to the audience, kind of because you can't say your truth in scenes in the way that
that's
traditional
right.
characters would.
Yeah.
And I think I never want to see this play done with an actor who isn't at your level, BD, because it's so important.
Yeah.
Everything that you were able to play within the armor that he has to sometimes put on, even with himself, I think at times, right, is remarkable. So
Wow.
it's a great, it's delightful to experience it and very moving. So you guys, I do want to give some time for audience questions, a few minutes. We've got folks in the aisles with microphones.
Yeah.
If you guys have a question for these two wonderful artists, you raise your hand and then just don't speak until the microphone gets to you so everyone can hear, all right? You guys, who has a question for these good folks here? Oh, great. Yeah.
Hello. Hi. This question's for both BD and Lauren. I actually saw the play last week.
great.
It's a great show. I'm a big fan of both of you. My question is around representation, POCs, and especially of Asians. I think this past year we saw Crazy Rich Asians make a huge splash.
Yeah.
And I've always felt like, at least in the theater community, POCs had a lot more representation than they have in Hollywood. And on the small screen, I wonder if either of you can talk more about representation, especially Asian Americans.
We have more where?
More representation in theater than than TV and film. That's a complicated and interesting
I'm not sure
question.
if that's actually true.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
I don't know if I know statistically what the answer to that actually is. And I think it is definitely interesting that there's a perception that there is more, that there's more freedom and all that. I mean, I know that in my own personal experience, I had a very wonderful initial experience in the theater in a Broadway show, but not really much of a Broadway career, really. I've done a few Broadway shows, but I don't go like some actors from Broadway show to Broadway show. There just aren't really parts for me that people think I'm eligible for. So that's a limitation that is really very valid and real. I have no real complaints about how it all works out because things tend to work out, and that's fine. But I would like to do more Broadway shows.
Yeah.
But however, I don't know whether it means that there's less or more. I mean, I can't wait for Lauren to be produced on Broadway because
Me either. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
it's important. It would be great.
Yeah,
it would be.
important.
It would. There are way more inferior writers than Lauren being produced on Broadway.
Absolutely.
But,
Yeah.
And I think it was within the last year that Young Jean Lee was the first Asian American
Yes.
Woman on
Woman.
Broadway.
woman
yeah.
on Broadway.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Or
it's,
writer,
and it's
yeah.
kind of crazy because not to say that I couldn't do it, but it's like when you are the first or the second, it's just something that people don't think of. They're
Yeah.
like,
They have
they're
no
like,
concept
I don't
of
know
it.
if you
Yeah.
feel quite right to be
Yeah.
on that stage. I can't quite.
There's
say
something that
why,
feels risky
but-
to me. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot
We're
of.
still there.
Yeah, we're still there. We're still
But, yeah.
fighting that. I think there's a lot of attention on this right now, and a
Yes.
lot of, and like we're also in this incredible age. I mean, we've always had incredible playwrights, but now I just feel like we're really seeing the harvest of the investment in the new play infrastructure.
That's right.
That happened about a generation ago in this country, and I feel like we just have so many incredible playwrights, so many incredible Asian playwrights right now. That we should have multiple like plays by Asian playwrights on Broadway every year. There's no reason why we can't, talent-wise. Right?
Lauren, do you feel like you are the fruit of that generational investment in new playwrights?
I think so. I mean, I think the last 3 plays that I wrote, like King of the E's, Great Leap, and Cambodian Rock Band, have all been the products of commissions. So the theater coming to us and say, write us a play, and we'll help work on it with you. And not just commissioning, but also developing it through readings, getting it into production. I feel that there's just been a lot of care and attention that I really appreciate. And I think that makes such a difference.
Yeah. And there are 3 great plays that are going on to have long lives. As I remember, I mean, when I first started, which was 15 years ago, I mean, it's not been that long, but I remember noticing there'd be one good production of a play by a writer of color or a woman, and then it wouldn't get the second, third, fourth that you would see from another production. Or there would be one person who got all of the productions and basically was the one non-white playwright in a season, right? Yeah, and I do think that that's changing, although not quickly enough, right?
I do think that Lauren's work commands the energy that's there aren't a lot of playwrights being as produced as Lauren is
That's
right now,
true.
and that's not because there's some kind of diversity it's because the plays are very good.
That's
They're
right.
very producible, and people like them, and they do move the needle in a way, in a very positive way. But I think that Lauren's a very special writer in the way. I don't see it happening for anyone else quite the same way. And
I mean, the number of plays that you've produced back to back that have gone so
well,
big is
numerous
right? Yeah.
numerous productions of the same play in the same
play.
year.
Exactly.
And I mean, for a company like Steppenwolf to produce this play after it's been
Absolutely.
produced at 4 or 5 other theaters in the country is really speaks volumes about the play and about the playwright, and that's really great. It's just it's nice to be alive at a time when you can see something like that.
It really is, and I think Kui with Viet Gone is and I hope that we'll see the same with Poor Yellow Redneck.
He's coming back for Viet
He's
Gone
coming back
too.
here. Yeah. So, but I hope there will be more than just a couple that. Soon we'll be able to name, a ton of people. I'm interested in this thing about being you are a leading man, BD Wong. You are a leading man. You are talent, and I feel like we have that role in this. We have a good, solid leading man role with an arc for you in this play. But
it's a rare
thing.
But
there's not enough. Yeah, exactly.
I either have to kind of self-generate or work on my own or push my own projects up the mountain.
Yeah.
And at the same time subsidize all of that by being a character actor.
Yeah, that's
which
right.
I love to do, and which in recent years has been great for me because some of the character parts have become more interesting and more important.
Yeah.
But there was a long period of my career in which character roles were just set dressing, really not that interesting.
Exposition machines.
Or what do you call it? I don't know what you call it. Whatever.
Yeah.
But not as good as this. And so this is really kind of watershed for me. It's you've seen it and you know me. You know that I'm fully immersed in it. That I'm fully what I call fully activated. All the parts that are challenging to me and that are interesting to me are all happening in the same play.
Yeah.
And so of course it shouldn't surprise anyone that I want to do it more than once.
If I can ask, what are the roles that you want to tackle? What is if you have thoughts.
I was doing this play, and I was asked by a good friend of mine, a musical conductor, if I would come and do a concert of into the woods and play the baker.
Oh, you would be wonderful.
And
I
I
could see
said,
that.
you got to be kidding me. I can't do it. And it was like, I auditioned for that part in many productions and many times and never gotten it, never done it. And so then I think, well, and then people have asked this question and I've never had an answer.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I guess that's really one of my answers because I really do want to play that part.
Yeah, you'd be wonderful.
And I want to play Iago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That would be fun, yeah.
And I don't know. I want to play Sweeney Todd.
Oh, cool. That would be amazing. See, I want to see all three of those productions.
Yeah.
So. All right. Great. Other questions, you guys? Yeah. Let me see. I got this. Somebody. Oh, here we go. Right over here.
Hi. Hello.
Hi.
So my question is to BD Wong. Growing up, I never had any role models, like gay, especially gay or Asian, until I joined the group GAPA Theater, and that's where I found my brotherhood and people like myself. I actually came with my brothers here. They are all part of the GAPA Theater. So my question to you, BD Wong, is what were the challenges for you as a gay Asian in the acting business, and how did you cope with this? How did you deal with it, and what made you come on top?
Thanks for your question. I have a really, a very soft spot in my heart for you guys because, we are brothers, right? I would say that 50%, I don't know what the percentage is, a big percentage of my challenges were in myself, right? My understanding of what life or opportunities were available to me, my own baggage about that, my own baggage about what other people said, the obstacles that were created just by people making me less confident about things. I was lucky that I had this incredible relationship with a high school drama teacher at Lincoln High School in the Avenues, and she taught me my own potential. She saw my potential immediately. She took me. She talked to my parents about my potential, and she talked to them, Asian American parents, in the 1970s. Who really were, my older brother was a doctor, and that was, kind of really hard for me, but also kind of took the pressure off, but she kind of instilled in me a sense of possibilities. And I had a lot of baggage. I could talk for an hour and a half about the baggage that I had as an Asian American and as a gay person together, and how I thought it was. I felt this sad sense of hopelessness over these things that were in, the very definition of who I am. The thing that I kind of love the most about myself now. And those things were created. Those obstacles, that self-loathing came from the media and from feeling kind of less than, and feeling small, and feeling unsexy, and feeling less than, and that kind of really played a number on me when to the point where I was a little bit in denial about a lot of these things when I went into being an actor, and I'm not sure how I came around in two very specific ways. M Butterfly really helped me understand that it was really kind of beautiful to be Asian American, literally, and I really was grateful for the opportunity to be able to celebrate an Asian project and to kind of frontline it. No, not frontline. What's the frontman it? And be pushed forward, and so it was really positive, and that began a wave of kind of putting a spotlight on Asian Americans, not necessarily giving us a lot of opportunities, but we were on the table a little bit. And 3 years later, Miss Saigon opened, and Miss Saigon was its own kind of can of worms, but it was a thing that employed a lot of us and made us see our worth as performers, and that was really important and valuable. Then I became a parent in 2000, in 2000. In 2000. You're the dragon. Forget. 2000, I became a dad, and I had a son who is now 18, and who I learned from that. I wrote a book about him because he had a very difficult birth. And as I was going on this book tour, it wasn't until I was like packing to go on this book tour I realized that I was actually coming out, because I had been kind of not really dealing with being out in the media or anything like that. And this was press, and it was like, where did this baby come from? And I realized that this was an opportunity that I had been looking for, very similar to the opportunity that M. Butterfly afforded me, which was that I could be really positive about being gay for in a really kind of declarative way, in a very positive-based way, in a very kind of it gets better kind of way. And since then, I became a different person, really. I was only, it wasn't that long ago, but it was already pretty old when it happened, but it was the right time for me to kind of own it and be able to sit here and kind of talk about it the way that I did. Before, I was always kind of avoiding talking about it and stuff. So that's not a good answer to the question, except that, that's my story. It's fraught, really. It really is fraught. I really do relate to you and understand you really well, and I could talk forever about it. It's and I like the feeling of positivity that I have from being myself now, because I think it's kind of infectious. It's something that you have to share in order for it to make to make an impact, to talk about it and to describe it and to describe where it came from and stuff like that.
It's wonderful. Okay, I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions.
No, we have time for more.
Oh, okay. Let's see. In the back here. Yeah.
Hi.
Then.
My name's Alwele, and I actually saw you in Butterfly on Broadway.
Oh.
And I'm a high school drama teacher in Oakland.
Yay!
Yeah!
Woo!
I teach at Skyline, and there's about 10% of our population that I feel I don't have curriculum. And so what would you think would be seminal work that high school students should be reading by Asian diaspora playwrights?
Yeah.
And or for scene study or to be produced at a high school level?
There's no question about it. It's a complete no-brainer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You must come see this production. It is. A friend of mine who is working as a coach for a national high school acting award kind of thing was saying, what kind of stuff can I give the Asian American kids? And I said, you have to give them Great Leap. There are great scenes for young actors in Great Leap and in King of the Yees and all 3 of the plays.
Yeah.
And those are just 3 of the plays. And who else would you say? If we wanted to spread the world, who else would we say?
I should get your email address.
Yes.
Because there's a ton of playwrights. I would say Naomi Azuka has a lot of great like Polaroid stories, right? Yeah. Okay. Great. But I would say like Mike Liu has some really good stuff
Very
for
funny.
younger actors. Madhuri Shekhar has a play in Love and Warcraft. Kui Wen, all of his stuff, I think, is amazing for younger actors. Mia Chung is another good. There's a lot of people. So those are people off of the top of my head, and I'm leaving out a lot of people, but
like Julia Cho.
Julia Cho, who is living in this area now. Yeah, Durango. Really? And Lloyd Suh, is another really great playwright. So let me get your email address, and all of them have published plays, and
Yeah.
So
What I would also say is, so I'm part of the MAI Writers Lab, which is a kind of giant conglomeration of Asian American playwrights. Some of the people that you listed are part of that group. It's almost 40 Asian American playwrights who were regularly produced. So I would just go to the website and look at the list.
Yeah. Ray Pamatmat, Youth Can Shoot Things and Hit Them. There's a lot of good ones. So I don't know if somebody, I'll try and find you after. Yeah, great. Other hands, other questions. We've had a guy up front who's had his hand up for a while. Is there a way to get a microphone over here? I think Kayla, race. All right, Kayla's got you. All right.
Thank you. I go to a lot of theater in San Francisco and in New York, and you can go through an entire season and not see one Asian actor in a lead or even a supporting role. And so this is a question for BD Wong. You've been in theater, film, and television, and I'm just wondering if casting directors are very reluctant to cast an Asian American actor in a role that's not written as an Asian character, if that's still going on. I know a couple of years ago in Hollywood, there's a lot of discussion about how all the Oscar nominees were primarily white, and there were no African American nominees, but we go years and years without even one Asian nominee, and that doesn't really create any attention in the news. So I'm wondering if you feel like progress is being made for colorblind casting of Asian actors in Hollywood, Broadway, and TV.
Yeah, I mean, I think the needle has moved, and the needle has moved in my career since I started as it's gone along. That's definitely true, and yet at the same time, it's not good enough, right? And that we crave and really are anticipating more. It's both wonderful and kind of appalling that Crazy Rich Asians is such a big deal, right?
Yeah.
You know, we love it and we really are invested in it. But I mean, gosh, how long do we have to wait? It was really not, in my memory, Joy Luck Club, which was the last time when we had that kind of sense of validation, and that's a long ass time. And I feel that there are, I do feel that the notion of the colorblind thing is definitely shifted in the minds of casting directors, and now to the point, to be quite honest, where my white friends who are actors are feeling it. They're saying, well, go into the waiting room, and there's a black one, and there's a white one, and there's me, there's a black girl, there's an Asian girl, and there's a Latina, and one of us is going to get it, but it's never me, she says. At this point is what she's saying, and there is a truth to that. There's a wave, whether it's not specifically in favor of Asian Americans, but it is in favor of diversity, and it does create. Now, it doesn't always. It's not as common in leading roles as in really big leading roles. That's a big leap that they have to take. But it is the needle has moved. Like I said before, me playing this role and it being such a big deal is an indication that it's not quite great, perfect yet. It's great that Joy describes me as a leading man, but I never feel like a leading man, and that's not my self-esteem. Trust me.
Talent-wise is the thing. It's like your innate ability, you are. But I understand that those are not always the opportunities that you're given.
Yes,
right?
not at all, ever.
Or those are not the opportunities.
I have never kissed anybody on screen.
See, that's a crime.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm not trying to be weird. I'm just trying to say that there is a problem in the society for and Asian men in particular. I actually think being able to be seen as romantic leads, right? And and getting to see a multi-dimensional. That you have that your character will have a love life and will have a job, and instead of just a job, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Another question, you guys. I see a hand here.
It was
right here. Yes. Great.
Hi. I wanted to ask kind of the flip side of that question. If there's ever a legitimate creative reason for whitewashing, so particularly a lot of that has happened with Asian characters, but even in the LGBT community, if you look at the Oscars last month, 7 of the acting nominations were for straight actors playing LGBT roles, including 3 of the 4 winners.
Holy shit.
So what are those or kind of creative choices when a screenplay is being written? How a lot of it is explained as creative choice. or financial choice.
And it is. I mean, it is that. But there's a lot of other things. We are all out. We're all out here watching their decisions that they're making, and the industry is kind of run by certain people that think of things a certain way, and they in their minds. I don't. It's a very complicated issue, and in some ways, I think in my mind, it's like there was maybe a couple decades ago we would clamor to have these LGBT characters. We didn't care who the hell played them, and now we have them, and we want to own them as Asian American actors, and or as gay actors, and it's really complicated, and I don't think there's a blanket. A kind of a catch-all kind of way to look at it necessarily. It's maybe a case-by-case thing. There is the spirit of transformation, and actors do act, and acting is creative, and that's part of it. But that can't be all of it either, really. There's constantly this. Did you guys see Saturday Night Live? That the last Saturday Night Live, there was a really great skit about actors, about representation. It was really, really hilarious.
Yeah.
But the notion that Asian American actors should or should not play across nationality is a fascinating thing. In some ways, it is very beneficial that I'm playing this Chinese part. I understand a lot of very Chinese things. And I can also hear the Chinese dialect and all of that stuff. However, I'd like to play a Japanese person. I'd like to play, and my example is always if Meryl Streep gets to play a Polish lady and a French lady and a Russian lady and an Australian lady, then, I'm no Meryl Streep, but I don't know. But I would like those opportunities as a creative person. And I agonized over playing a trans woman because I didn't think that was right, because we're just at the moment now where trans actors are really coming into their own, and it's fantastic. But I just kind of had to kind of make a call on whether or not that was something that I felt strongly enough or not. And as it turns out, it's a very unique kind of character who has a bi-gender kind of identity. So. It wasn't as simplistic as me taking a job from a trans actor, but these things are all kind of questions that there isn't one single answer to. It's very complicated. Although I do not approve of, Emma Stone and ScarJo playing Asian characters.
It is going to haunt them for the rest of their careers.
Life.
Like, why would you do that?
Yeah. They were very naive to what they were getting themselves into, I think.
Yeah. And I also think more so than who the actor is exactly needing to match, the character, because you're born in San Francisco, you're not born in China, so there's always a reach somehow for the character.
Yeah.
I feel like I write plays, for instance, like King of the Yees, the people who play the Chinese American characters are not always Chinese American.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I think making the art happen with the best intentions possible, and also hiring practices that I just want to hire a lot of Asian American actors. And I think that's really important.
And you write what you know.
Yeah.
And in the case of these two plays, these are Chinese American characters, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And that because you're writing from your own, what it seems right. You're not good. You don't, because you feel that way about Asian American actors doesn't mean you feel the necessity to write a Filipino part or a Japanese American part, because you could if it came out organically, but you're not going to do it just to do it.
No, I don't think just to not to do it just to do it. But I think I'm always trying to figure out, I think I write pieces, that look at Asian American identity in a lot of different facets. And so, for instance, in King of the Yees, you have, for instance, there's two actor characters, and one of them is secretly, she's like, I'm Korean American, and I've been cast in this play where I have to play this Chinese American character. That in my plays, identity is very kind of tricky. I think similarly, the character you play in Mr. Robot, where it's not, just one thing.
Yeah.
Guys, I could talk to you all night long, but you've been very generous with your time. So I want to say thank you.
Well, wait.
Yes.
Before they
yeah.
applaud, I want Lauren to introduce her dad and her mom.
Oh,
If they're
yeah.
here. And
Where are they?
stand
You gotta
up.
introduce
Stand up.
yourselves.
And
Yay! Woo!
Yeah.
and I think my
And do you
mom
have
is right there.
anybody?
Yes,
Yeah.
get up.
Yeah.
This is BD's mom.
Get up, lady.
Yeah.
It's right there. Yay. Well,
You see, we are good Chinese children.
all right.
We
Thank you.
came back home.
Thank you guys for giving us amazing artists and humans in this world. Thank you all for joining us tonight. And thank you, Lauren. Thank you, BG. Thank you for your art. Thank you for your generosity.